I'm going to show you how to make a very basic Lego figure with the body and head and everything. I'm just going to use a grey colour just so you can see all the different body parts, and then what I'll do is make some other videos showing you the different characters, different colours that you can get in the Lego figures that have got a bit more detail, such as doing the hair, the eyes. But for this one we're just going to do a very basic Lego body. Okay, so what I've done is I've made myself a little template out of card of the legs, the body and the head, so that I've got an idea of proportion. Now if you prefer, instead of doing that, you could print yourself off a picture of a Lego figure and then scale everything to size against the picture. So I've got my bit of fondant, I'm going to roll it, but I don't want it thin, I want to keep it quite thick so that the Lego figure will stand up. Okay, so I'm literally going to put my template on. So I'm going to start with my little legs and I'm going to cut around, keeping them as neat as I can get them. It does move around a little bit, I'm afraid. Now if you find that you do struggle with just normal fondant, just add a bit of flour paste or modelling paste to it and it will thicken up your icing a little bit and just make it that little bit easier for you to use. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is, looking at my little template, I've drawn on everywhere where there are lines on the legs. So I'm going to make a little indentation. I'm just going to use the back of my knife. You can use a modelling tool if you want, but I just find it easy to use the back of my knife. So I'm just going to put in where his feet should be, a bit of an indentation like that. Okay, now if you spend a bit more time than I have done, just to make sure it's level. Okay, so I'm going to flatten it out just a tiny bit using my knife. Okay, and then I'm going to put the next line in, which is near the top of his legs, just up here. And again, you try and flatten that out just a little bit with your finger so that it's further indented than the feet. Now you'll notice I have misshaped it a little bit there, so what I'm going to do is just cut that bit off at either side so that it's straight again. Okay, so now we're just going to give him a line where his waist is, like that. Now if you want to keep it very basic, you don't have to add in all the lines, and I'm just going to run through this one a little bit with a modelling tool so that it rounds it off slightly for me, as this bit on a Lego legs is quite rounded. Okay, like that. Now we need to split his legs in half, and you're just going to go up to this line here. So I'm going to go slightly to one side of the centre and then slightly to the other side of the centre, and then push your knife carefully through the middle, pulling out the centre, and just neaten it off with your modelling tool like that. Okay, so then there you've got your little Lego legs. So we'll just put them down to one side. So you're going to do the same thing again. So you're best having rolled your icing big enough to cut out your body and your legs so that they're both the same thickness. So I'm going to place this on here, and again we're just going to cut round, and you don't have to do them as small as this. If you want to scale them up so that they're a little bit bigger, then you can do. My template is just a little bit bigger than a normal size Lego figure, as to do them the same size they are quite small and it does make it very fiddly. Okay, so you've got your basic body, and it's just a really nice simple shape, nothing too fancy on the body unless you want to paint it up, and literally you're going to attach it to the legs. Now you can either do it with water or you can do it with a bit of royal icing, whatever you prefer. Just make sure it's a similar width to the tops of the legs. So I'm just going to put a bit of water on there, and I'm just going to stick the body to the legs like so. Okay, and I'm just going to leave him down there to dry. Now if you prefer to sit him up, instead of sticking it on the waistband, you would stick his body on this bit instead, and that would literally just make him sit up. So I'm just going to take a small amount now for the head. Now I've got a rough size here for his head, and this is the bit I find most difficult, is making the head the right size. So I might need a tiny bit more icing than what I've got here for the head, but just put it on and test. So I'm going to just put a little bit more on there for his head. Okay, so this size might be alright. So what I'm going to do is I start with a ball, I'm going to squash it slightly between two fingers, and I'm going to roll it like this to try and make it the shape of a Lego man's head. So you've got your shape there. Now they do have little necks, so what I'm going to do is take a little bit of fondant again, and I'm just going to roll it out. And they've got a little bit that goes on the top of the head as well. Now if you've got hair on your Lego figure, you don't need to worry about this too much. So just using a little round cutter, I've just cut a small round little shape of fondant. Now I'm going to put a little bit of water on that and just attach it to the top of his head. Now I've not stuck his head on yet, so it will move around a little bit. So literally just stuck that on there like that using a little bit of water. And we'll do the same for the bottom of his head. Now I want it to be slightly wider, and my next size cutter up's too big, so what I'm going to do is roll it slightly thicker than that one. I'm going to cut it out, and then what I'll do is when I stick it on, I'll squash it a little bit, which will just make it a little bit bigger. So turn his head upside down, put a little bit of water on there, and squash it a little bit, adding it as centre as you can get it. A little bit more water again, and then we're just going to stick that onto the body, just making sure his neck is pretty central, like that. Okay, now you want to add some arms, so again just take a little bit of fondant, just take a little bit more and roll it. Right, so I'm going to roll the piece of fondant into a long snake shape. And just put it against your little Lego figure to see how thick you'd like his arms. Now the arms even, not legs, are quite slim, they're not massive arms. So try and keep it reasonably even, but sometimes it doesn't end up the same width all the way down, don't worry too much. Okay, so I'm going to put it against him, and what I'm going to do is cut it so it's the same length as his body, and I'm going to do that so that I've got two of those, and I'm going to use the other end so that I've got a rounded bit on the top. I'm just going to cut it there, even me with two arms. Now if you find the arms are a little bit bulky on the top, just cut a little bit off, and it'll just allow you to push that bit a bit flatter against the body. Okay. Rounding off the ends. Now what you want to do is put a slight indentation where the arm's going to bend, and it's slightly further down than halfway on the Lego man's arm. So we're just going to bend that like that, and I'm going to add a little bit of water to it. And I'm going to stick this to his side, like that. Obviously you can change the position of the arms to wherever you prefer them to be. Just make sure you've got enough water on to stick it. Now, if you are struggling to stick it, you can use some glue, or you could use a little bit of royal icing. Okay. Now, if you want to leave that to dry a little bit so that his arms do set on, then you can do that if you want. Or you can try and add his little hands, but I would suggest leaving it a little bit to dry just to make sure that they are on there securely. And I tend to make them in the lying down position, wait while they've dried before I stand them up. So we're just going to take a little bit of fondant again, I'm going to roll it into a slightly oval shape, which I'm just going to squash and pinch at each end. And I'm literally just going to move that round into a bit of a claw shape, which will go on to be the Lego man's hand. Now, if you just make them both before you stick them on, so that you can make sure they're both the same size, as it can be quite difficult to get two hands of the same size for the Lego men. So they're similar-ish in size, and again, you can stick them on with water or a little bit of royal icing. So I might try a little bit of royal icing on these, just to stick them on to the hands, and position them whichever way you want. If I'm putting something in the Lego man's hand, sometimes I make the hand and put the item in the hand before sticking it onto the Lego man themselves. Okay, just make sure it's going to stick. And that is your basic little Lego figure. I'll try standing that up in a moment, but I'm just going to give it a few minutes to sort of set a little bit before I move it around in case it comes apart. But that's your basic Lego figure. Like I say, you can do that in all sorts of colours, changing his clothes, painting him things on, and again, when you get into more detail, you can put him hair and face